School union boss boasts that it's not important that our children can't do math. It's enough that they know the meaning of words like insurrection and coup. I hate to break it to you, you twisted child-abusing educrat. You're not even teaching our kids enough language skills to even hate Trump properly. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. MyPillow is always offering great deals, and this week they want you sleeping on the very best sheets imaginable. That's right, their famous Giza sheets are available right now for 50% off. That means you get two for the price of one. All you have to do is use the code Dr. Duke, D-R-D-U-K-E. Visit MyPillow.com, and you can save up to 66% on everything. But use that code, D-R-D-U-K-E, Dr. Duke, so we can help them, they can help us, and the economy moves forward. Okay, we start in crazy California today, where the president of an actual Los Angeles teachers union says that it doesn't matter that your kid can't read, can't do math. All that matters is we've taught them to be critical thinkers, anti-Republicans. We've turned your children into, they know what the word coup and January 6th and insurrection is. They know all this now. They don't know a damn thing that's going to help them in their future career, but they know enough to hate Trump and everybody who followed Trump. If you ever wanted insight into the dark, foolish mind of a union thug educrat, this story is going to scare you and make you shake your head.
I don't know which way to shake my head, but yes, shake your head. We're talking, of course, about United Teachers Los Angeles President Cecily Myert Cruz, who claimed, you know what? There's actually no such thing as learning loss. No such thing whatsoever. You know why? It's because of how these kids know.
Isn't this just wonderful, Katie? That before you pass out that marvelous opportunity. So the fact that our kids are getting dumber every year, that doesn't really, nothing to see here.
Nothing.
It's not really happening.
Continue on.
We're not teaching them reading and math so we can teach them to hate American culture. Mm-hmm. And that's not learning loss, right? That's even Steven. We'll keep your kids ignorant and illiterate, but they'll hate the country, so we're even. That's exactly what she wants you to believe.
Yeah, basically. And the thing is, she actually said this way back in May. We're just kind of figuring it out now. But she did an interview with Los Angeles Magazine, and she actually says there is no such thing as learning loss. Yes, our kids didn't lose anything. Anything? Question mark? But anyway, she says our kids didn't lose anything. It's okay that our babies may not have learned all their times tables. They learned resilience. They learned survival. They learned critical thinking skills. They know the difference between a riot and a protest. They know the words insurrection and coup.
And according to this glittering jewel of ignorance, a riot is a bunch of unarmed people wandering into the Capitol building. That's a riot that needs to be put down with bloodshed. Put a bullet through a young woman's head for being there illegally. While a protest is hundreds of thousands of BLM thugs, burning things down, beating people senseless, and throwing rocks at cars and policemen. That's the difference. That's the critical thinking that this educrat thinks is evening the playing field in your public schools.
And in addition to that lovely comment, which you can debunk at every single one of her
it's total bunk
minor sentences that she spoke, she also claimed in this interview that having police-free schools is not a radical idea. It's not a radical request to have schools where there is no police presence. As she says, it's not radical to ask for ethnic studies. Either, you know.
No, skip math and English and do ethnic studies.
Yes, and it's not radical to ask for childcare. In the school, there you go. She said it. So, school to her is childcare. It's just childcare is school.
Right.
They're the same thing because there's no learning at childcare. Like a school would have the learning, so that's why they didn't miss anything. They didn't lose anything.
Not only are the public schools, particularly in Los Angeles, not only are the public schools treating their students like daycare patients, daycare customers, not students. Now you want to have free daycare on the same campus, so all the teachers can bring their own kids.
Well, yes. And
one more entitlement after another, minus any accountability whatsoever.
Yeah, so we know it's not radical for childcare. It's not radical to ask for police-free schools so that students don't feel criminalized. That's not radical. That's just fact. These are her words.
Yes.
The president of the LA
doesn't know the difference between fact and opinion, does she?
But that's okay. And I guess last year, during the last school year, she did condemn a plan that offered financial incentives for schools that fulfilled specific criteria related to offering in-person education. Because no, we can't have in-person education. See, that's the kicker. She said, if you condition funding on the reopening of schools, that money will only go to white and wealthier and healthier school communities that do not have the transmission rates that low-income Black and brown communities do. This is a recipe for propagating structural racism, and it is deeply unfair to the students we serve.
Translation: give us all the money and stop damn asking us to open the schools. You keep giving us all the money, in fact, more money, because we've got such infected kids. Give us more money to not teach, and we'll call that perfect educational pedagogy. This is the way we move forward in the public schools. You give us more money not to teach. See, this way you're denying schools that teach, because most of those schools are apparently white schools. So it's a win-win, right? You deny that money to the white schools that are trying to actually teach their kids something, and you give it to us who are teaching our kids nothing and refuse to even reopen the schools. And then you give us free daycare, and then you get rid of the cops, and then you transform the curriculum away from math and science and English to what? Ethnic studies.
Now, before we move on, just a little reminder for you that if you enjoy our content, please consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation literally keeps this show going. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And as a special thank you, we will ship you our brand new navy blue American Patriot tumbler. It has all the muscular likeness of our first president, the George Washington. Not only is English racist, as we all know, we've known for some time now, but the simple capitalization of those English words is also racist.
How dare it? How dare you capitalize the first letter of a word, of a
sentence? Proper noun.
That's racism. Why does that capital stand towering down on what clear... Look, and after the capital letter, almost every other letter is black ink, right? So it's one big capital at the beginning, and all those minority little black letters. Oh, this is a horrible situation.
Wow. We have Dr. Linda Manigans, who is a Associate Vice President of the Indigenization and Decolonization at Mount Royal University in Alberta, Canada. Oh, Canada. She was named to her position all the way back in May of this year, and now she's announcing her joining of the lowercase movement. It's a movement. If you're looking, you know what? It's fall almost here. A lot of people think it's fall now. It's post Labor Day. So you're looking for a movement. Join the lowercase movement. It's protesting what she sees as the mistreatment of Indigenous people.
Excuse me. May I ask a historical question?
You may not.
Native Americans didn't have writing until we got here, right?
Indigenous, we're in Canada.
Okay, Indigenous Canadian tribes didn't really have written language until the white man got here. Yeah. So why is she meddling around with the white man's language?
As she says.
Why doesn't she focus on getting rid of writing
altogether?
To go all the way back to a pre-Columbian time.
Baby steps. Baby steps. Okay. We're getting there.
So getting rid of capital C is one step on the way to making Native American kids even completely illiterate. Okay, just wanted to see what they were.
She said, "We resist acknowledging the power structures that oppress and join the movement that does not capitalize. Indigenous people have been actively engaged in a multidimensional struggle for equality since time immemorial. We strive for historical, cultural recognition and acknowledgement of colonial oppression that persistently devalues the diversity of our unique cultural heritages. The Office of Indigenization and Decolonization supports acts that focus on inclusion and support the right of all people to positive inclusion and change.
I didn't hear in that explanation a single thing about capitalization. What is the problem? I mean, do you notice how she didn't, and nowhere in her screed does she explain what exactly is colonization about allowing capital letters to begin sentences?
It's a multi-dimensional struggle for equality.
What does it have to do but with hitting the shift cap letter boxes on your computer?
Maybe it's an able-bodied thing.
Is it?
No.
Again, I hope, Mom and Dad, listen. They say these things like it's the end of the world, how clever we are, but they can't explain to you what the racism is.
You know what I say to her, since her name is Linda? Linda, listen. Linda. Have you seen Linda, listen? If you don't know that little meme, that little video, go out and look for Linda, listen, child. He's adorable. Anyway, according to Dr. Linda, who, this is the fun part, doctor, the D is still being capitalized. Her name, though, Linda Manigans, is lowercase, but the
doctor is capitalized.
Doctor.
Yes. That's the white man. The white man's diploma gets all the street cred, right?
Just saying.
Little Indian girl playing cowboys and Indians with her $250,000 a year job. She still has to keep her white man title, doctor, and still has to capitalize the D in her white man title.
She will also continue to capitalize indigenous.
Well. So it's okay. The I in indigenous is okay.
I guess.
You could.
Okay. She did say the goal of equity, diversity, and inclusion of all people is synonymous with the interests of indigenous people. We support and expand the goal of equality and inclusion to all forms of life and all people. Go
ahead.
She says we join leaders like E.E. Cummings, Bell Hooks, and Peter Kulczycki, who reject the symbols of hierarchy wherever they are found and do not use capital letters except to acknowledge the indigenous struggle for recognition.
So,
fact checked, E.E. Cummings actually
was not doing it for political reasons. Yep, no.
It wasn't him who even did the lowercase e.
Nope.
Other people did that for him. Anyway.
And wait, so you're basically saying that capitalization is racist except when the Indian is capitalized or the indigenous, right? So that's what you're going to continue to capitalize indigenous. So what you don't want is parity and equity in lettering, right? You don't want alphabetical parity. What you want is only your team gets to capitalize and nobody else. Is that pretty much how it works, honey? Doctor?
Just so everyone's aware, at the university that she teaches, Mount Union, they have 15,000 students. 6.1% are indigenous, meaning roughly 14,100 are not. So all these students, all of them, will be taught, you don't need to capitalize anything.
Right.
Because 6.1% of students are indigenous and they probably do not care about this.
And the other thing is that you've already gotten rid of grammar and syntax.
Everything is.
Those things are racist, right? And so I go back to where I started. What this movement is all about is getting rid of the written language. Because written language is a constant reminder of an evolutionary thing, of a higher form of conversation, of recording knowledge that Native Americans just never got around to producing. And so the way to fix this is to stop everybody else. First, you stop them from using grammar. First, you stop them from arguing that there are correct forms of English. Then you get rid of punctuation and capitalization. Then you got to keep moving, right? Her native ancestors didn't write things down, so you shouldn't write them either, except based on what you've already seen from her, when it's all said and done, only Indians will be allowed to write things down, not white men, and that's how we fix the problem, just like we fix it with capitalization.
Well, Virginia continues to deceive. Virginia's Department of Education hosted a speaker who instructed teachers to exclude the role Muslim extremism played when teaching students about 9/11. Let me say it again. The Virginia Department of Education hosted a speaker who instructed the teachers to exclude the role Muslim extremism played when teaching students about 9/11.
When teachers in Virginia school teach about 9/11, they can talk about planes, they can talk about George Bush and the evil Jews blowing up the buildings, but what they can't talk about is extremist Muslims.
Yes.
Okay, so they can't mention them.
Well,
Okay.
according to
According to.
this PowerPoint that was delivered by education leadership scholar. Ooh, an education leadership scholar named Amara Ducour. Teachers were instructed to avoid using language that could pin the events of 9/11 on Muslim extremism.
See, this is the evolution. It used to be don't blame Muslims, blame extremists, right?
Yes.
Now, to blame Muslim extremists is also racist, so don't use the word Muslim, period.
But what you can do is blame all of the white extremism
Of
on the
course.
January 6th.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm reasonably certain that's what this is.
I guarantee
Guarantee it.
that within even that PowerPoint, she moved to that. Oh, and like an example of, just on January 6th. Like she'll just throw that out casually that we can do that, but not 9/11. Just so you know. She then pointed to the heightened anti-Muslim sentiment that allegedly ticks up around the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks.
What's your
know.
evidence?
I don't know what said
20
heightened anti-Muslim sentiment is.
20 years they've been saying this. Ever since the first tower fell. The big concern here is not all those dead people, it's what's going to happen to our Muslim communities. And the answer was nothing. Effectively nothing. In fact, ironically, a story came out just yesterday. Guess, Katie, overwhelmingly what ethnicity is the most discriminated against, experiences the most violence on the basis of their ethnic heritage. It's not Muslims, it's Jews. Are we allowed to mention extremist Muslims when we're talking about the Jewish community? No, we're really not. So, because that would just be Zionism, wouldn't it?
Now, as her presentation reads, school and classroom 9/11 commemorations are sites for increased anti-Muslim racism. This year's 20th anniversary commemorations will likely, based on what we don't know, will likely result in heightened risks of racist discourse, threats, and violence targeting Muslim students in schools and society. Educators are well positioned to disrupt these risks by centering the socio-emotional needs of Muslims in their commemoration plans. Okay, it's been 20 years, correct? The students who are in those classrooms who are being taught about this were not alive when this happened. They have no understanding of it. Even the people who are now teaching said new students have hardly any remembrance of it because most of them were first grade, second grade. When I went back to education school, I was the only one who had a good understanding and remembrance of 9/11 because I was old enough to remember what happened. All my peers basically had to learn about it. And from what they learned, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And so to have any sort of anti-Muslim, sentiment is foolish thought. It's foolish.
And she gave her game away. We have to do all this. We have to eradicate the word Islam when we talk about what happened on 9/11. We can't, in any way, shape, or form, even in the name of historical accuracy, talk about fundamentalist or extremist Muslims in the name of social emotional learning. Did you hear it? And how many times have we told you that when you hear the term social emotional learning, it's just a way of saying, this is why we're not teaching your kids math and science, because we have opted instead to care about their feelings. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take their feelings and we're going to make sure nobody's feelings ever get hurt. That means that anything that could possibly, not that it'll ever happen, that might happen to some Muslim kids' feelings on 9/11 means that we can't teach we shouldn't even really teach the incident at all.
Now, in this slide, she also talks about what harmful teaching examples are. And she says, anything harmful teaching includes creating a tense classroom environment, reducing 9/11 instruction to death counts and fear-mongering, assumptions of emotional distance. I don't even know what that means, assumptions of emotional distance. Teaching about Islam and or Muslims. Okay? And then also amplifying the extremist acts of 9/11. Amplifying. How do you amplify it other than to just show what happened? It's amplified.
Amplified means
sense.
To just talk about. Right?
It's just like just.
So history has to stop for the wellness of Muslim students, is what we're being told.
And then also demanding the condemnation of 9/11. Failing to respond to anti-Muslim racism, and reproducing a single American narrative that marginalizes other students. You're not allowed to, according to her, talk about American exceptionalism at that time either.
And yet, I'm sure she promotes the 1619 curriculum, which completely stigmatizes and one way blames America for all the evils of the world. That's okay, but you just can't potentially upset Muslims by actually talking about history on 9/11. There you go. That's the plan for your schools, kids. It is Raphael week on the Dr. Duke Show, where we get to study the work of and the biography of one of the great painters of Western culture. Michelangelo, you got Da Vinci, and you got Raphael. That's the big three of the High Renaissance. There are other great painters, really great painters, but those three. And talk a little bit about Raffaello Sanzio de Urbino. That's his full name. Born in 1483, died in 1520, known as Raphael. And go ahead and give us our picture here. He was an Italian painter and architect of the High Renaissance. His work is admired for its clarity of form, ease of composition, the visual achievement of the Neoplatonic ideal of human grandeur. These painters, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and of course Raphael, were trying to idealize the human form, to make it perfect, to be able to represent, to hold a mirror up to the natural world and create human form and human emotion and the human soul through art in ways that even nature in all of its flawed nature itself was unable to do so. So that's an important thing. And if you take a look at this beautiful picture here, this is a portrait of a young woman with a unicorn. And it seems kind of an odd, even when Katie saw that we were doing this, she was tickled by the idea of the unicorn. It's a Renaissance ideal, this painting here. Unicorns in the late medieval, early Renaissance period were symbols of fidelity, among other things. They were creatures of remarkable of independence because there weren't too many of them around, they thought. They were magical creatures, but they were symbols of fidelity. The composition of the picture, placing the figure in a beautiful loggia opening out onto a landscape, the 3/4 length format was apparently inspired by the Mona Lisa. You can certainly see that when you look at this picture, that perhaps at the back of his mind, Raphael had the sensation that was the Mona Lisa, the La Gioconda, which was painted, of course, by Da Vinci between 1503 and 1506. One art historian actually observes of the painting, quote, "However unabashedly Raphael adopts the pose, compositional framework and spatial organization of the Leonardo portrait, the cool watchfulness in the young woman's gaze is very different than the image we get from the Mona Lisa." And that's true. She looks really concerned. She almost looks like she's on edge or on alert. You don't have that kind of, the smile here, not that mysterious half smile. A restoration of this painting, a cleaning and a restoration that was done in the 1930s confirmed that really before there was a unicorn, which was traditionally a symbol of chastity and fidelity in medieval romance, was the place that was St. Catherine's wheel. So before this painting was altered, it was actually supposed to be an image of St. Catherine. She was killed in part by she was going to be put on a wheel, a rack basically, and tortured. That was what was in her hands. You almost can see her hands bowing in a circular way. And later changes to the painting replaced that wheel with a really kind of cute unicorn. It's a baby, right?
All right, well, we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members, and today we would like to give a shout out to Robert from Rushsylvania, Ohio. Ohio. Thank you, Robert, for supporting us.
Nice to see a town named after Rush Limbaugh. We really appreciate that. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.